Hey guys, June here, and I just wanted to quickly weigh in on a whole bunch of different gear that was implemented in the last few updates because there seems to be a lot of confusion about what's good and what's not good. First off, earlier today with the Children of Ma quest, we got a new pair of ranged gauntlets that have almost best in slot damage bonus. They're 1 point weaker than Ascension grips, but they also have 2 passive effects. First off, Snipe gets a 25% accuracy bonus, which is a huge improvement to damage if you're anywhere that you don't have 100% hit chance, but also they allow you to continue moving while you're using Snipe, which is a huge quality of life improvement and is going to be very important at a lot of high level bosses. These are likely your new best in slot ranged gauntlets, with the exception of anywhere that you have 100% hit chance and you don't benefit in any way from being able to move with Snipe, in which case that's still Swift Gloves. On top of that, last week we got Bounty Hunter, which had a whole slew of new rewards that we can use for combat. I am going to skip over most of the stuff that's aimed at lower level PKers because that's not going to be relevant at bossing at all, but there's still tons of rewards here that will be relevant for people doing PvM at high levels. First are these things called adrenaline crystals, which you add to either an adrenaline or a replenishment potion, and they increase the amount of adrenaline you gain from using those potions from 25% to 30%, which you may think is beneficial, but I actually did a whole bunch of trial and error making different ability rotations, and there's really no DPS improvement to actually doing this. The only exception to that would be if your ultimate rotation somehow involves like a special attack or using some kind of a defensive ability. This should very rarely or never be the case, and so I don't think these are going to be particularly useful. Next up is an item called the Ancient Warrior Patch, which can be used with any of the Degrade to Dust PvP armor that's dropped by Revenants and the Chaos Elemental, and it increases them from tier 78 to tier 88. And in addition to this update, they also added a much longer durability timer for those items, so they last for an extremely long time. The only thing I think most people will use this for is to upgrade their Statius Warhammer, which now, with the extended life, everybody should end up owning one of these, and as a tier 88 weapon, not only are you going to benefit from using the special attack to get the affinity debuff, but you'll deal a pretty intense amount of damage when actually using that special attack. Apart from that, the only use I see for these is maybe as an alternative to tier 90 gear for people who don't have access to that yet. Tier 88 is a very close alternative, and they do have an extremely long lifespan. And finally, we've got the 3 new two-handed weapons, one for each style: Annihilation, Obliteration, and Decimation. They're tier 87, so they do represent a good alternative to people who don't have access to tier 90s yet, especially if the price comes down over time, which I expect it probably will. However, what's most interesting about these weapons is actually their special attacks, and that's been probably the most contentious part of discussing them with people. Getting the easy one out of the way first, the Staff special attack costs a full 100% adrenaline, and it cuts the amount of healing that your opponent gets in half for some period of time. That is pretty much exclusively useful in PvP. You're not going to benefit in any way from that anywhere in PvM, especially at that amazingly high adrenaline cost. The Bow special attack costs 50% of your adrenaline, and it turns all of your abilities into a 3x3 AoE attack for 10 seconds. This might seem great on its face, but it's actually quite a bit weaker than you'd expect. First off, it takes longer than 10 seconds to build the 50% adrenaline that the ability costs, so under no circumstances can you maintain this effect indefinitely unless you're utilizing something like the Green Beam at Telos. For the same reason, you're not going to be able to get the same kind of potential damage output that you would be able to with Mechanized Chinchampas, since you won't be able to effectively stack Death Swiftness and consistent high damage threshold abilities alongside using up that 50% adrenaline for the special attack itself. For this reason, anywhere that you actually benefit from the AoE, you're going to be getting better results from using Mechanized Chinchampas, and if you don't benefit from the AoE, you'll be doing better damage with something like a Nox Bow or Ascensions. Finally, the melee weapon special attack, which costs 50% adrenaline, adds this effect that for 30 seconds, any successful attack against the enemy adds a stack to your player, which lasts for the full 30 seconds or until you miss an attack. Each of these stacks adds 1% to your damage dealt until they're cleared, and so at places that you have 100% hit chance and don't risk this effect being cleared by a missed hit, you can deal some pretty significant damage using this effect. This pretty much limits its usefulness to Slayer tasks, as well as really low-level bosses like King Black Dragon. The only problem with that is that the vast majority of melee Slayer tasks involve using either a Scythe to get really good DPS output across an area of effect, attacking multiple enemies at one time, for which this definitely wouldn't compete, or using a combination of Darklight with an offhand Drygore on a Demon-type enemy. When you take that into account, there are actually very few tasks that this would be useful, and so I'm not necessarily sure it's worth justifying buying one of these. Anyway, in the future I am going to do a video exclusively dedicated to special attacks where I'll probably cover these weapons in more depth. I just wanted to get some preliminary advice out there for you guys to try and clear up some of the confusion around the new items and tell you guys what's good. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.